My wife Diane stood in our bedroom doorway, holding her overnight bag like she was heading to a spa weekend instead of a family emergency. The bag looked suspiciously well packed for someone who'd just gotten devastating news about her sister. My sister had an accident. I need to stay with her tonight, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. After 15 years of marriage, you learn to read the tells. The way she shifted her weight from foot to foot. The way her voice pitched just slightly higher when she wasn't telling the whole truth. Send her my love, I replied, keeping my voice steady and concerned. Is Rebecca okay? What happened? Diane's shoulders relaxed slightly. She probably thought she'd cleared the first hurdle. Car accident. Nothing too serious, but she's shaken up. You know how she gets. I did know how Rebecca gets. She calls me when her garbage disposal makes weird noises. She calls me when she can't figure out her streaming service. If Rebecca had been in any kind of accident, I would have been her second phone call, right after 911. Drive safe, I said, walking over to kiss her forehead. Call me when you get there. I will. She squeezed my hand, and for a moment I almost believed her. Almost forgot about the late nights at the office, the new clothes, the way she'd started keeping her phone face down during dinner. I watched from our living room window as her Honda Civic pulled out of our driveway. The taillights disappeared around the corner, heading toward the main road. If she was really going to Rebecca's place across town, she should have turned left. She turned right. My phone was in my hand before I'd consciously decided to make the call. Rebecca answered on the second ring. Andrew, hey, what's up? Just checking on you. Diane said you had an accident? Silence. Then, an accident? What kind of accident? I'm fine, I've been fine all day. I just finished watching a movie and was about to go to bed. The living room suddenly felt smaller. The walls seemed to press in just slightly. She said she was coming to stay with you tonight, because of your accident. Andrew, I haven't talked to Diane in 3 weeks. We had that stupid fight about Mom's birthday party, remember? What's going on? I thanked Rebecca, told her it was probably a misunderstanding, and hung up. Then I opened the Find My Phone app on my device. Diane and I had shared locations for years. Practical reasons, mostly. If one of us got stuck in traffic or had car trouble, the little blue dot that represented my wife was moving steadily away from our neighborhood, but not toward Rebecca's apartment, not toward the hospital. The dot traveled through downtown, past the business district, and finally came to rest at Harbor View Apartments. I knew those apartments. Expensive, modern. The kind of place where young professionals with more money than sense paid twice what they should for granite countertops and a view of the marina. I also knew who lived there. Marcus Delacroix, Diane's co-worker at the biotech startup where she worked in marketing. Marcus, who she'd mentioned maybe a few too many times over the past 6 months. Marcus, who apparently needed her immediate attention on this Tuesday night while her sister supposedly recovered from an accident that never happened. The blue dot stayed put for 20 minutes. Then it started moving again, but just slightly. Probably from the visitor parking to the resident parking. Probably from the lobby to apartment 4B, which I happened to know was Marcus's unit because Diane had mentioned the company holiday party there last December. I sat in my recliner, staring at that blue dot, and felt something shift inside my chest. Not anger exactly, more like the sensation you get when you realize you've been playing a game where someone else knew all the rules and you didn't. My work boots were still by the front door. I put them on and walked out to the garage. We had a decent collection of luggage stored on the metal shelving unit I'd installed last spring. 2 large suitcases, a rolling bag, and a duffel bag. All of them were about to get some use. The house felt different as I moved through it, gathering Diane's belongings. 15 years of shared space, shared stuff, shared routines. Her coffee mug in the sink from this morning. Her reading glasses on the nightstand. Her half of the closet, organized by color and season. I started with the obvious things. Clothes, shoes, toiletries. Then I moved on to the personal items. The jewelry box her mother had given her. the stack of romance novels she kept on her side of the bed, the framed photo of us from our honeymoon in Maine, back when we both believed this would last forever. Each item that went into the suitcases felt like closing a chapter, not with sadness exactly, more like finally admitting what I'd probably known for months but hadn't wanted to face. The blue dot hadn't moved. Still parked at Harbor View Apartments, still living the lie she'd told me 3 hours ago. I took screenshots of her location, lots of them, timestamps and GPS coordinates and that little blue dot that told the whole story. Then I scrolled back through the location history. Last Tuesday night, same apartment complex. 2 weeks before that, same place. A pattern going back months. My phone buzzed. Text message from Earl Finch, the locksmith who'd done work on our house before. He was also a night owl who didn't mind emergency calls if you paid his after-hours rate. Earl, it's Andrew Waverly. I need my locks changed tonight. All of them. Can you be here in an hour? Everything okay? Everything's fine. I just want new locks before morning. It'll cost extra for the night call. Not a problem. Earl showed up at midnight with his van full of hardware and questions he was smart enough not to ask. He'd lived in this town long enough to recognize the signs. Packed suitcases on the front porch. Husband home alone on a Tuesday night. Wife's car nowhere to be seen. You want the deadbolts rekeyed too? He asked, examining our front door. Everything. Front door, back door, garage door. I want every lock in this house changed. He worked efficiently, the sound of his drill mixing with the distant hum of late-night traffic. I made coffee and checked my phone. The blue dot was still there, still telling its story. You know, Earl said as he installed the new deadbolt, my cousin's wife tried this same thing about 5 years ago. Told him she was visiting her sick mother in Portland. Turned out she was visiting her personal trainer in his apartment downtown. How'd that work out for her? She came home to find all her stuff on the lawn and the locks changed. Took her about 6 months to find a new place to live. Funny thing about small towns. Word gets around pretty quick about that kind of thing. Earl finished the job at 2:30 a.m. I paid him in cash and added a generous tip for the discretion. He loaded his tools back into the van and paused at the driver's door. You want some advice from someone who's seen this before? Sure. Don't let her back in tonight. Whatever story she comes home with, don't let her back in. Once you start believing the lies again, it gets harder to stop. I watched his taillights disappear down the street, then checked my phone one more time. The blue dot was moving, heading back toward our neighborhood, heading home to continue the lie she'd started 4 hours ago. I turned on the porch light and sat in the living room with all the lights off. The packed suitcases were lined up on the front porch like soldiers. The new keys were in my pocket. The screenshots were saved to my phone and uploaded to cloud storage. At 3:17 a.m., headlights swept across our driveway. Diane's Honda pulled up to the garage, and I watched through the window as she noticed the suitcases. Even from inside the house, I could see her confusion turn to something else, something that looked a lot like panic. She tried her key in the front door. It didn't work, of course. She tried it again, jiggling the handle like maybe the lock was just being stubborn. Then she knocked. I opened the door and looked at my wife of 15 years. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with in college, still the person I'd trusted with everything that mattered to me. How's your sister? I asked. The question hung in the air between us like smoke. Diane's mouth opened and closed without sound. Her eyes darted from my face to the suitcases behind her, then back to my face. Andrew, I can explain. I'm sure you can. Rebecca was fine when I called her an hour ago, confused about why I was asking about an accident that never happened, but fine. You called Rebecca? I did. Funny thing about emergencies, they tend to involve actual emergency situations. Diane's shoulders sagged. The overnight bag slipped from her hand and hit the porch with a soft thud. Can we talk about this inside? We can talk about it right here, How long has this been going on? It's not what you think. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots. Her location at Harbor View Apartments, the timestamp showing she'd been there for hours, the history showing this wasn't the first time. What am I thinking exactly? She stared at the screen like it was written in a foreign language. You were tracking me? We've been sharing locations for 3 years, Diane. You set it up yourself, remember? For safety reasons. This is crazy. You're acting crazy. Am I? Because from where I'm standing, the only crazy thing is that I trusted you. The porch light cast harsh shadows across her face. She looked older suddenly, tired in a way that had nothing to do with the late hour. Marcus needed someone to talk to. His father is in the hospital. Is that what we're calling it now? Nothing happened, Andrew. We're friends, co-workers. He was upset and needed support. I almost laughed. Almost. Support that required you to lie to me about your sister having an accident? Support that required you to spend the night at his apartment? Support that's been happening every Tuesday night for the past 2 months? Her face went pale. She hadn't realized I could see the pattern in the location history. Hadn't thought about digital breadcrumbs leading back to every lie she'd told. I want to come inside. I want to explain properly. The locks are changed. What? New locks. New keys. Your stuff is on the porch. She turned to look at the suitcases again, really seeing them this time. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. This is my house too. Was. Past tense. Tonight it became my house. Your house is apparently at Harbor View Apartments. Diane started crying then. Not the gentle tears of sadness, but the ugly crying of someone whose world had just shifted off its axis. Part of me wanted to comfort her. 15 years of marriage doesn't just disappear because someone changes the locks. But a bigger part of me remembered sitting in that recliner, watching the blue dot that represented my wife's location, realizing that everything I'd believed about my marriage was built on lies. Where am I supposed to go? I hear Marcus gives great emotional support. She flinched like I'd slapped her. You're being cruel. I'm being honest, maybe for the first time in months. A car turned onto our street, headlights sweeping across the houses. Mrs. Haskell from next door, probably coming home from her night shift at the hospital. She slowed down as she passed our driveway, taking in the scene. Diane standing on the porch with suitcases, me in the doorway at 3:30 in the morning. Small towns don't keep secrets very well. By tomorrow afternoon, half the neighborhood would know something had happened at the Waverly house. Can we please discuss this inside like adults? Adults don't lie about family emergencies to cover up affairs. It's not an affair. I showed her the phone screen again. What would you call spending every Tuesday night at another man's apartment? It's complicated? It's really not. You lied to me. You've been lying to me for months. You packed an overnight bag to spend the night with another man. The only complicated part is figuring out how long this has been going on. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her makeup. I never meant for this to happen, but it did happen, and you chose to lie about it instead of being honest. Because I knew you'd react like this. Like what? Like someone whose wife has been cheating on him? We haven't been happy for months, Andrew. You know that. And there it was, the blame shift, the attempt to make this about our marriage instead of about her choices. So you decided to find happiness somewhere else without bothering to end our marriage first. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Help me understand how lying to your husband about family emergencies while you spend the night at another man's apartment isn't exactly what it looks like. She didn't have an answer for that. Or maybe she did, but she was smart enough to realize that any answer would just dig the hole deeper. I'll stay at Rebecca's tonight, she finally said. Good luck explaining why you need a place to stay when you told me you were already staying there. Another car turned onto our street. This one slowed down even more as it passed our house. Word was definitely going to spread. I'll call you tomorrow, when you've had time to calm down. Don't. What? Don't call me tomorrow. Don't call me until you're ready to tell the truth about everything. All of it. How long it's been going on, what you've been doing, what you want from this marriage. She picked up her overnight bag and looked at the suitcases. I can't carry all of this. Then make multiple trips, or call Marcus. I'm sure he'd be happy to help. The cruelty in my voice surprised both of us. I'd never talked to her like that before. Never talked to anyone like that. But then again, I'd never had my 15-year marriage implode on a Tuesday night before. Diane loaded 2 suitcases into her Honda, struggling with the weight. I watched from the doorway but didn't offer to help. She'd have to come back for the rest, which meant another conversation, another chance for her to try to explain away the unexplainable. This isn't over, Andrew. Yeah, it is. She drove away for the second time that night, taillights disappearing around the same corner. But this time, I knew where she was really going. I locked the front door with my new key and walked through the house, turning off lights. The coffee maker was still gurgling from when I'd made a pot for Earl. The kitchen looked exactly the same as it had 6 hours ago, but everything felt different. My phone buzzed. Text message from Diane. I'm sorry. I deleted it without responding and turned off the phone. Tomorrow would bring more conversations, more explanations, more attempts to put our marriage back together. But tonight, for the first time in months, I knew exactly where my wife was and exactly what she was doing. And for the first time in months, I didn't care. I woke up at 6:30 a.m. to the sound of my neighbor's dog barking and the realization that everything from the night before had actually happened. The empty space in our bed where Diane usually slept, the silence where her morning routine should have been, the absence of coffee brewing because she always started it before I got up. My phone had 17 missed calls and 12 text messages, all from Diane. The messages started apologetic and got progressively more desperate as the night went on. Please, answer your phone. We need to talk. This is ridiculous. You can't just throw away 15 years. The last message, sent at 5:47 a.m., was different. Marcus says you're having a breakdown. Maybe you should talk to someone. I stared at that message for a long time. Marcus says, like they'd been discussing my mental state over morning coffee, like my reaction to discovering my wife's affair was the real problem here. I made my own coffee and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. If Diane wanted to play games, I could play games too, but I was going to play them better. First stop, social media. Diane's Facebook page, which I'd barely looked at in years. Her recent posts were a masterclass in creating false narratives. Photos of us at dinner last month with captions about how blessed she was. Anniversary post from 6 months ago about finding your soulmate. All of it designed to show the world what a happy marriage looked like. But if you knew what to look for, the cracks were visible. Comments from Marcus on almost every post. Inside, jokes that I wasn't part of. References to conversations I'd never heard about. I screenshotted everything. Not because I planned to use it, but because I was starting to understand that documentation was going to be important. My phone rang. Rebecca. Andrew, what the hell is going on? Diane showed up at my apartment at 4 a.m, crying and saying you'd lost your mind. Did she tell you about the accident? What accident? Exactly. She told me last night that you'd been in an accident and she needed to stay with you. When I called to check on you, you were fine. When I tracked her phone, she was at her coworker's apartment. Silence on the other end. Rebecca was processing. She's been having an affair? Looks that way. And she used me as her alibi? She did. More silence. Rebecca had always been the reasonable one in Diane's family. The one who called out bad behavior instead of making excuses for it. I'm sorry, Andrew. I had no idea. I know you didn't. That's what made it such a good lie. She's still here, sleeping on my couch. Do you want me to tell her to leave? I thought about it. Part of me wanted Diane to have nowhere to go, wanted her to feel as displaced and confused as I'd felt watching that blue dot on my phone screen. No, let her stay, but don't let her play the victim. She made her choices. What are you going to do? Good question. 24 hours ago, my biggest concern was whether to refinish the deck this spring or wait until fall. Now I was trying to figure out how to untangle 15 years of shared life from someone who'd been lying to me for months. I'm going to go to work and pretend everything is normal while I figure out what comes next. Are you okay? I'm fine. Angry, but fine. Call me if you need anything. And Andrew? I'm sorry my sister is such an idiot. I finished my coffee and got ready for work. Shower, shave, the same routine I'd followed for years. But everything felt slightly off-kilter, like looking at a familiar room through a funhouse mirror. The paper mill where I worked as a supervisor was a 20-minute drive through downtown. I'd been there for 12 years, worked my way up from floor operator to shift supervisor. Good job, decent pay, solid benefits, the kind of steady work that was supposed to provide stability for a marriage and maybe kids someday. The kids thing had been a recurring conversation for the past few years. Diane always had reasons to wait. Her career was taking off. We should pay down more of the mortgage first. Maybe next year would be better timing. Now I wondered if she'd been stalling because she was already planning her exit strategy. Morning, Andrew. Jerry Martinez, one of my floor operators, fell into step beside me as we walked toward the main building. You look like hell. Rough night. Everything okay at home? Jerry was a good guy, but he was also the mill's unofficial gossip network. Whatever I told him would be all over the plant by lunch break. Everything's fine. We clocked in and started the morning routine. Equipment checks, safety briefings, production schedules, normal Tuesday morning stuff that felt anything but normal. My phone buzzed constantly throughout the morning. More texts from Diane, a few from numbers I didn't recognize. Probably Marcus, trying to insert himself into the situation. At 10:30, my phone rang. Unknown local number. Andrew Waverly. Mr. Waverly, this is Patricia Chen from Hartwell Biotech. I'm calling about your wife. Hartwell Biotech, Diane's company, where Marcus worked. What about her? She called in sick today, but we have an important client meeting this afternoon that she's supposed to lead. We're trying to reach her, but she's not answering her phone. Interesting. Diane was dodging calls from work. That wasn't like her at all. I'm sorry, but I don't know where she is. We're having some personal issues right now. Oh, I see. Well, if you do hear from her, could you ask her to call the office? I'll pass along the message if I talk to her. I hung up and went back to work, but my mind was spinning. Diane loved her job. She'd worked late nights and weekends to get promoted to marketing manager. She wouldn't just skip an important meeting unless something was seriously wrong, unless she was too busy dealing with the fallout from her affair to focus on work. Lunch break couldn't come fast enough. I drove to Murphy's Diner, a local place where the food was good and the coffee was strong. I needed to get away from the mill, away from Jerry's curious looks and the constant buzzing of my phone. I was halfway through a burger when someone slid into the booth across from me. Marcus Delacroix. He was exactly what I'd expected. Mid-30s, gym-toned, expensive haircut, the kind of guy who probably used hair product that cost more than my work boots. He was wearing a suit that looked like it came from somewhere other than the local department store. We need to talk, he said. No, we don't. Diane is worried about you. She thinks you might be having some kind of breakdown. I took another bite of my burger and studied him. He was nervous, trying to project confidence, but not quite pulling it off. His hands were fidgety, and he kept glancing around the diner like he was worried about who might see us together. How long? I asked. How long what? How long have you been sleeping with my wife? He flinched. It's not like that. Then what's it like? Diane and I are friends, close friends. She's been unhappy in her marriage for a long time. So you decided to help her out with that unhappiness. She needed someone to talk to, someone who understood her. And that required her to spend the night at your apartment? Nothing happened last night. She was upset. I let her sleep on my couch. I pulled out my phone and showed him the location history. All those Tuesday nights, all those lies. What about all these other nights? His confidence cracked a little more. Look, I know how this looks, but it's complicated. Everyone keeps saying that. It's not complicated. You're sleeping with a married woman. She's lying to her husband about it. Pretty straightforward. Diane is going to leave you anyway. She's been thinking about it for months. That hit harder than I'd expected. Not because it was surprising, but because it was probably true. Then why hasn't she? Because she's trying to do the right thing. She doesn't want to hurt you. I almost laughed. Lying and cheating is doing the right thing? She was going to tell you. She just needed time to figure out how. Time to figure out how, or time to make sure you were a sure thing before she burned her bridges. He didn't answer that. Couldn't answer it, probably, because we both knew what the truth was. What do you want from me? I asked. I want you to stop harassing her, stop tracking her phone, stop changing locks and throwing her stuff on the porch like some kind of crazy person. Or what? Or I'll have to do something about it. I leaned back in the booth and really looked at him. Expensive suit, soft hands, the kind of guy who probably paid someone else to change his oil. He was trying to intimidate me, but he had no idea who he was dealing with. You'll do something about it, I repeated. That's right. Like what, exactly? Like whatever it takes to protect Diane from your harassment. I stood up and dropped a 20 on the table. Marcus, let me give you some free advice. You don't know me. You don't know what I'm capable of, and you really don't want to find out. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Stay away from me. And tell my wife that if she wants to talk, she can call me herself, instead of sending her boyfriend to do it. I walked out of the diner, leaving him sitting in the booth. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the effort of staying calm. Every instinct I had was telling me to drag him into the parking lot and show him exactly what 15 years of manual labor had done for my upper body strength. But that would make me the bad guy. That would give Diane ammunition to use against me. Instead, I got in my truck and drove back to work. But first, I made a stop at the auto parts store. They had what I needed in stock. A small bottle of valve grinding compound. Nasty stuff that would absolutely destroy an engine if someone were careless enough to put it in their oil filler cap instead of motor oil. Not that I would ever do something like that. But it was good to know it was available if I ever needed it. The afternoon shift dragged by. More texts from Diane, more missed calls, a few messages from numbers I didn't recognize, probably Marcus trying different phones. At 5:30, I clocked out and drove home. The house was exactly as I'd left it that morning. Empty, quiet, missing the sounds and smells of another person living there. I made dinner for one and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. Time to do some research. Diane's company had a website with employee profiles. Marcus Delacroix, Senior Marketing Associate. Graduated from some fancy college I'd never heard of. Previously worked at a big pharmaceutical company in Boston before moving to Maine 2 years ago. 2 years ago, right around the time Diane started talking about how much she loved her new job. His social media profiles were more revealing. Lots of photos of expensive restaurants, weekend trips to places like Boston and New York, the kind of lifestyle that required serious money, or a serious credit card debt problem. Photos of company events where he and Diane stood just a little too close together. Comments on each other's posts that were just a little too familiar. A pattern going back months, maybe longer. I was building a timeline when my doorbell rang. Diane stood on the front porch, looking like she hadn't slept. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing the same clothes from the night before. "Can I come in? Are you here to tell me the truth?" "I'm here to talk." That's not the same thing. She sighed. Yes, I'm here to tell you the truth. I opened the door and let her into what used to be our house. She looked around like she was seeing it for the first time, or maybe for the last time. You want coffee? Please. I made a fresh pot while she sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten thousands of meals together, where we'd paid bills and planned vacations and talked about our future. How long? I asked, setting a mug in front of her. 6 months. The truth, Diane. That is the truth. 6 months since it became physical. And before that? We were friends, co-workers, we talked. About what? Work stuff, life stuff, you, me. About how we weren't connecting anymore. About how we'd grown apart. I sat down across from her. So instead of talking to me about it, you talked to him. I tried to talk to you. You were always tired from work, or busy with house projects, or watching television. So this is my fault. That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? She wrapped her hands around the coffee mug like she was trying to warm herself. I'm saying our marriage was in trouble long before Marcus came along. But Marcus came along anyway. Yes. And you decided that sleeping with him was better than trying to fix things with me. It wasn't a decision. It just happened. Bullshit. You don't just accidentally spend 6 months lying to your husband. You don't just accidentally pack overnight bags and create fake emergencies. You made choices, Diane. Own them. She started crying again. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. But I don't know how to fix this. You can't fix this. What do you mean? I mean it's over. Our marriage is over. Don't say that. Why not? It's true, isn't it? You've been planning to leave me for months. Marcus told me so this afternoon. Her face went pale. You talked to Marcus? He came to the diner where I was having lunch, wanted to threaten me into leaving you alone. He did what? Told me to stop harassing you. Said he'd do something about it if I didn't back off. I didn't ask him to do that. Didn't you? You told him I was having a breakdown. You sent him to clean up your mess. I was scared. I didn't know what you might do. What I might do? Diane, I changed the locks and packed your bags. I didn't burn the house down. You were tracking my phone. Location sharing that you set up 3 years ago. But nice try making me sound like a stalker. She wiped her eyes with a napkin. What happens now? Now you decide what you want. Him or me. Your marriage or your affair. You don't get both. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. I need time to think. You've had 6 months to think. Time's up. She stood up from the table. I should go. Yeah, you should. Can I get the rest of my things? They're still on the porch. All of them? Everything I could think of. If I missed something, make a list. She walked to the front door, then turned back. I do love you, Andrew. I know you don't believe that, but it's true. If you loved me, you wouldn't have been sleeping with someone else for 6 months. People can love more than one person. Not when they're married, they can't. She left without saying goodbye. I watched from the window as she loaded the rest of her suitcases into her car. She struggled with the heavy ones, and again, I didn't offer to help. As she drove away, I realized something had changed. The anger was still there, but it was different now. Colder, more focused. Diane wanted to play games. She wanted to have her marriage and her affair and somehow make me the bad guy for not accepting it. Fine. I could play games too. I just hoped she was ready for the rules I was going to use. The next morning brought clarity along with coffee. I'd spent the night thinking about everything Diane had said and everything she hadn't said. The gaps in her story. The way she'd tried to make our marriage problems sound like justification for her affair. The way she'd painted me as the unreasonable one for refusing to accept being cheated on. But mostly, I'd thought about Marcus showing up at the diner, trying to intimidate me into backing down. That had been a mistake on his part. A big one. I called in sick to work. First time in 3 years, but I needed a day to handle personal business. Jerry would spread rumors about it, but I didn't care anymore. Let people talk. My first stop was downtown to see Tom Bradley, the lawyer who'd handled our house purchase and our wills. He was a small-town attorney, but he was sharp and he knew how to keep his mouth shut. Andrew, good to see you. What can I do for you? I need to know about divorce, assets, procedures, timelines, everything. Tom leaned back in his chair. I'm sorry to hear that. How long have you and Diane been having problems? I found out she was having an affair 2 days ago. She's been lying about it for 6 months. Any chance of reconciliation? None. Tom pulled out a legal pad and started taking notes. Okay, let's talk about what you're dealing with. Maine is a no-fault divorce state, which means adultery doesn't technically matter in terms of asset division, but it can matter in other ways. Such as? Such as if she's been spending marital assets on her affair, expensive dinners, hotel rooms, gifts. That money can be recovered. I thought about Marcus's expensive clothes, his fancy apartment. How would I prove something like that? Credit card statements, bank records, receipts. You'd be surprised how much evidence people leave behind. What about the house? Joint ownership means it gets divided unless one party can buy out the other. Given your income versus hers, you'd probably have to sell. That hit hard. I loved our house. We'd spent years fixing it up, making it ours. But if keeping it meant staying married to someone who'd been lying to me for months, I'd rather live in an apartment. How long does the process take? Depends on how cooperative she is. If you can agree on asset division, custody arrangements if applicable, and support issues, it could be done in a few months. If she fights it, could take a year or more. No custody issues, no kids. That simplifies things. What about support? What do you mean? Spousal support, alimony. She makes good money, you make good money. Probably won't be an issue, but it depends on how vindictive things get. Vindictive. That was an interesting word choice. Tom, what if I wanted to make things difficult for her? Legally difficult, I mean. Andrew, I have to advise you that revenge tactics usually backfire in divorce proceedings. The best approach is to be reasonable, document everything, and focus on protecting your own interests. I'm not talking about revenge, I'm talking about consequences. Tom studied me for a moment. What kind of consequences? She's been lying to me, to her family, to her co-workers. She's been using company time and resources to conduct an affair with a co-worker. There have to be consequences for that kind of behavior. Company policies are between her and her employer. But if you're asking whether her affair could affect divorce proceedings, the answer is maybe. If she's been dishonest about assets, if she's been spending marital money on her boyfriend, if she tries to claim the marriage failed due to your behavior when she's the one who was cheating, all of that could matter. I left Tom's office with a folder full of paperwork and a much clearer understanding of what I was facing. Divorce was going to be expensive, time-consuming, and emotionally brutal. But it was also going to be thorough. Every financial record would be examined. Every asset would be accounted for. Every lie Diane had told would eventually come to light. My second stop was the bank. I wanted to understand our financial situation before Diane had a chance to hide anything. Joint checking account, joint savings, joint credit cards. 15 years of shared financial responsibility that was about to become very complicated. The checking account showed the usual pattern of deposits and expenses. But there were some irregularities. Cash withdrawals that I didn't remember making. Restaurant charges that I'd never seen. A hotel bill from last month when Diane had supposedly been at a work conference. The hotel was local. The Harborview Inn, about 10 minutes from Marcus's apartment. I asked for printed statements going back 6 months. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. Regular cash withdrawals, always on Tuesdays. Restaurant charges for 2 people at places I'd never been. Charges for lingerie at stores where Diane had never shopped before. She'd been funding her affair with our joint money. Money I'd earned working overtime shifts at the mill while she was planning her exit strategy. That was going to stop immediately. I opened a new checking account in my name only and transferred half of our joint savings. Legal, according to Tom, and smart. I also removed my name from the joint credit cards we shared, leaving Diane responsible for her own charges going forward. My phone buzzed while I was finishing the paperwork. Text from Diane. We need to talk about practical things. Bills, mortgage, etc. I replied, make an appointment with Tom Bradley. We'll handle everything through lawyers. Her response came immediately. That's not necessary. We can work this out ourselves. No, we can't. You've been lying to me for 6 months. I don't trust you to be honest about anything anymore. You're being ridiculous. I didn't respond to that. Instead, I drove to the post office and rented a P.O. box. All my mail was going to be redirected there, starting immediately. I didn't want Diane intercepting bank statements or legal documents. My third stop was the most important one. Hartwell Biotech, Diane's company. The building was modern glass and steel, the kind of place that screamed, we have money and we want everyone to know it. The lobby was all marble and chrome, with a receptionist who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. I'm here to see Patricia Chen, I told her. Do you have an appointment? She called me yesterday about my wife, Diane Waverly. I have some information she might find useful. Patricia Chen turned out to be the Human Resources Director. Mid-40s, professional, the kind of person who'd seen every workplace drama imaginable and wasn't easily shocked. Mr. Waverly, thank you for coming in. I hope your wife is feeling better. Actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Diane wasn't sick yesterday. Patricia's expression didn't change, but I could see her mental gears shifting. Oh? She was dealing with some personal issues related to our separation. I thought you should know, since she missed an important meeting. I see. Is she planning to return to work today? I honestly don't know. We're not communicating directly anymore. Everything is going through lawyers now. I'm sorry to hear that. I pulled out a folder I'd prepared. There's something else you should be aware of. My wife has been having an affair with one of her co-workers, Marcus Delacroix. Patricia's professional mask slipped slightly. That's a serious allegation. It's not an allegation, it's a fact. I have documentation. I showed her printouts of the location data, the pattern of Tuesday night visits to Marcus's apartment, the timeline going back months. This shows she's been conducting a personal relationship on company time and possibly using company resources. I thought you should be aware of it before it becomes public knowledge. Patricia studied the documents. Why are you bringing this to me? Because my wife and her boyfriend seem to think there won't be any consequences for their behavior. I disagree. Mr. Waverly, I appreciate you bringing this to my attention, but I have to ask, what do you hope to accomplish here? I hope to accomplish exactly what any employer would want to accomplish, making sure employees aren't violating company policies regarding workplace relationships and professional conduct. She was quiet for a long moment. I'll need to discuss this with our legal department. Of course. Just so you know, I'll be providing this same information to my divorce attorney. It may become part of the court record. I left Patricia Chen with copies of everything and drove home feeling better than I had in days. Not happy, exactly, but purposeful. Like I was finally taking action instead of just reacting to other people's choices. My phone was ringing when I walked in the door. Marcus. What the hell did you just do? I'm sorry. Who is this? You know damn well who this is. You went to our company. You talked to HR. I provided information that I thought they should have. You're trying to get us fired. I'm trying to make sure there are consequences for your actions. Amazing concept, I know. This is harassment. This is accountability. There's a difference. Diane is right about you. You are having a breakdown. Marcus, let me explain something to you. I work in a paper mill. I operate heavy machinery for a living. I know what breakdowns look like, and this isn't one. This is what happens when someone decides to stop being a victim. You can't destroy people's lives just because your marriage didn't work out. I'm not destroying anything. You and Diane did that all by yourselves. I'm just making sure everyone knows about it. He hung up on me. 5 minutes later, Diane called. Andrew, what did you do? I told your HR department that you've been having an affair with a coworker. Seemed like something they should know. You're trying to get me fired. I'm trying to get you held accountable for your choices. This is insane. You're destroying my career over a personal matter. You made it a professional matter when you started sleeping with your coworker on company time. It wasn't during work hours. The hotel bills say otherwise. The Tuesday afternoon restaurant charges say otherwise. Want me to fax you the bank statements? Silence. She was realizing how much evidence I'd gathered. I could lose my job over this. You could. Actions have consequences. I thought we were going to handle this like adults. Adults don't lie about family emergencies to cover up affairs. Adults don't spend 6 months cheating on their spouses. Adults don't send their boyfriends to restaurants to make threats. Marcus was trying to help. Marcus was trying to intimidate me into shutting up and accepting being cheated on. That was a mistake. What do you want from me? I want you to understand that your choices have consequences. For you, for Marcus, for everyone involved in this situation. And what about your choices? What about the consequences of trying to destroy my career? My choice is to make sure the truth comes out. If the truth destroys your career, that's on you, not me. She hung up. I made dinner and ate it while watching the local news. Normal Tuesday night routine, except everything was different now. My phone buzzed with text messages throughout the evening. Diane, Marcus, numbers I didn't recognize. Probably friends and coworkers who'd heard about the situation. I ignored them all. Let them panic. Let them scramble to control the narrative. I was done being reactive. Around 10 p.m., my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Rebecca standing on the porch. Hey, she said when I opened the door. Can we talk? Sure. Come in. She looked around the house, taking in the changes, the absence of Diane's things, the general sense of someone living alone. Diane is a mess, she said. Good. Andrew. No, Rebecca, don't. Don't try to make me feel bad for her. She made her choices. I know she did, and I'm not defending what she did. But going after her job? That seems like what, exactly? Vindictive. It's not vindictive, it's logical. She violated company policy. She used marital assets to fund an affair. She lied to me, to you, to her employer. Why shouldn't there be consequences for that? Rebecca sat down on the couch. Because you loved her once. I loved the person I thought she was. Turns out that person didn't exist. She's still your wife. Not for much longer. Is this really what you want? To destroy her completely? I thought about that question. Did I want to destroy Diane? Or did I just want her to face the same consequences that anyone else would face for making the same choices? I want her to understand that actions have consequences, I said finally. I want her to understand that she can't lie and cheat and manipulate people without paying a price for it. And if she loses her job? Then she loses her job, just like I'd lose mine if I violated company policy. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. She asked me to talk to you, to see if you'd back off. And what did you tell her? I told her she should have thought about consequences before she started lying to everyone. That surprised me. Really? Really. I love my sister, but she screwed up. Big time. And now she's trying to make you look like the bad guy for not just accepting it. Thank you. For what? For not trying to make this my fault. Rebecca stood up. I should go. But Andrew, be careful. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But don't let anger make you do something you'll regret later. After she left, I sat in my living room thinking about what she'd said. Was I being vindictive? Was I letting anger drive my decisions? Maybe. But I was also tired of being the only person in this situation who was expected to be reasonable. Tired of being told to calm down, to be understanding, to consider Diane's feelings. What about my feelings? What about the consequences of her choices on my life? My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "This isn't over." I replied, "You're right. It's just getting started." Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new conversations, new opportunities to make sure everyone involved in this situation understood that choices have consequences. I was looking forward to it. Thursday morning brought rain and a phone call that changed everything. I was drinking coffee and checking email when Tom Bradley called with news. "Andrew, we need to talk. Can you come in this morning?" "What's wrong?" "I'd rather discuss it in person." An hour later, I was sitting in Tom's office while he spread documents across his desk like he was laying out evidence for a jury. "Your wife filed for divorce yesterday," he said. "She's claiming irreconcilable differences and asking for spousal support." "Spousal support? She makes more money than I do." "She's also claiming that you've been emotionally abusive and that she fears for her safety." I stared at him. "What?" "She filed a restraining order request. Claims you've been stalking her, tracking her movements, harassing her at work." "That's completely false. I know it is. But we need to address it seriously. There's a hearing scheduled for Monday morning." My hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from rage. "She's trying to make herself look like the victim." "That's exactly what she's doing. And it's not uncommon in these situations. The spouse who cheated often tries to flip the narrative, make themselves look like the wronged party." "Can she do that?" "She can try. But we have documentation that contradicts her story. The location sharing was consensual. You haven't contacted her workplace inappropriately. You haven't threatened her." "What about Marcus threatening me?" "Tell me about that." I walked Tom through the encounter at the diner. Marcus's attempt at intimidation, his claim that he'd do something about it if I didn't back off. "Any witnesses?" "The waitress, maybe. Other customers." "We'll look into that. It could help establish that you're the one being threatened, not the other way around." Tom leaned back in his chair. "There's something else. Diane's lawyer is claiming that your visit to her HR department constitutes workplace harassment. I provided factual information to her employer about policy violations. I agree, but they're trying to paint it as vindictive harassment designed to cost her job. Maybe it will cost her job. That's not harassment. That's consequences. Andrew, I need you to understand something. In divorce proceedings, perception matters as much as facts. If a judge thinks you're being vindictive or trying to punish your wife beyond what's reasonable, it could affect the outcome. So I'm supposed to just accept being cheated on and lied to? No, but you need to be smart about how you respond. Document everything, but don't do anything that could be construed as harassment or intimidation. I left Tom's office feeling like the world had shifted again. Somehow, in the space of 3 days, I'd gone from being the wronged husband to being painted as the dangerous one. My phone was buzzing constantly. More unknown numbers, more text messages. Word was spreading through town, and people were taking sides. I stopped at Murphy's Diner for lunch, partly because I was hungry, and partly because I wanted to see if anyone would talk to me about what had happened with Marcus. Small towns have long memories, and diner conversations often turn into valuable information. Andrew, Betty, the longtime waitress, waved me over to a corner booth. Heard you're having some troubles at home. News travels fast. Honey, in a town this size, news travels at the speed of light. You want the usual? Please. Betty brought coffee and leaned in conspiratorially. That fancy boy who came in here Tuesday looking for you? He was back yesterday, asking questions about you. What kind of questions? Wanting to know if you'd ever caused trouble here, if you had a temper, if anyone had ever seen you get violent. Real subtle like. What did you tell him? I told him you'd been coming here for years and never caused a problem for anyone. But he kept pushing, like he wanted me to say something bad about you. Anyone else he talked to? He tried the same thing with Joe behind the counter. Joe told him to take his questions and his fancy suit and get out. I thanked Betty and ate my lunch while thinking about Marcus's fishing expedition. He was building a case, trying to find evidence to support Diane's claims about me being dangerous or unstable. That meant they were coordinating their stories, planning their strategy. Fine, two could play that game. After lunch, I drove to the Harborview Inn, the hotel where Diane had supposedly been at a work conference last month. The same hotel that showed up on our credit card statement. The desk clerk was a young woman who looked bored with her job and happy to have someone to talk to. I'm trying to track down some information about a charge on my credit card, I told her. My wife stayed here last month, but I want to make sure the billing is correct. What's the name? Diane Waverly. It would have been March 15th. She typed on her computer. I see it. 1 night, King Suite, 2 guests. 2 guests? Yes, sir. The reservation shows 2 adults. Can you tell me who the second guest was? I'm sorry, I can't give out that information. Privacy policy. I thanked her and left, but I had what I needed. Diane had booked a hotel room for 2 people while claiming to be at a work conference. That was evidence of deception, possibly fraud if she'd claimed it as a business expense. My next stop was Hartwell Biotech. I wanted to see if Patricia Chen had made any decisions about the information I'd provided. Mr. Waverly, she said when I was shown into her office, I was hoping you'd come back. Have you had a chance to review the situation? We have. And I have to tell you, it's complicated. How so? Your wife and Mr. Delacroix have both denied having an inappropriate relationship. They claim they're friends and co-workers. Nothing more. What about the evidence I showed you? They have explanations for everything. The location data shows she was at his apartment, but they claim it was for work-related discussions. The hotel charge was supposedly for a legitimate business meeting. I felt my jaw tighten. You believe that? It doesn't matter what I believe. It matters what I can prove. And without more concrete evidence, it's their word against yours. What would constitute concrete evidence? Patricia was quiet for a moment. Mr. Waverly, I can't advise you on how to investigate your wife's personal life. But I can tell you that our employee handbook clearly states that romantic relationships between coworkers must be disclosed to management. And if they haven't been disclosed, then that would be a policy violation subject to disciplinary action. I understood. She couldn't tell me directly what to do, but she was pointing me in the right direction. What if I could prove they were lying about the nature of their relationship? Then we would have to take appropriate action. I left Hartwell Biotech with a new understanding of what I needed to do. Diane and Marcus were denying everything, claiming their relationship was purely professional. If I could prove otherwise, their jobs would be at risk. But how do you prove an affair when both parties are denying it? The answer came to me as I was driving home. Social media. People having affairs often can't resist leaving digital breadcrumbs, especially in the early stages when everything feels exciting and secret. I spent the evening going through every social media platform I could think of. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, looking for photos, comments, check-ins, anything that would establish a pattern of personal rather than professional interaction. What I found was subtle but damning. Photos from company events where Diane and Marcus were always standing together. Comments on each other's posts that were just slightly too familiar for coworkers. Check-ins at restaurants and bars on the same nights, posted minutes apart. The smoking gun came from Instagram, a photo Marcus had posted 6 weeks ago from a restaurant downtown. The caption read, "Great dinner with amazing company," with a heart emoji. In the background, barely visible, was Diane's distinctive red scarf hanging on the back of a chair. The same scarf she'd worn in a photo she'd posted the same night, claiming she was having dinner with a friend, but not tagging anyone. I screenshotted everything and compiled it into a folder. Then I did something that felt both necessary and slightly dirty. I created fake social media accounts and sent friend requests to both Diane and Marcus. Diane accepted the request from Jennifer Walsh, a fake account I'd created with a generic profile photo. Marcus accepted a request from Mike Thompson, supposedly a local business owner. Now I could see their private posts, their personal interactions, their real social media behavior instead of the sanitized versions they showed to mutual friends and family. What I found there was even more revealing. Private messages they'd forgotten to delete. Photos from their Tuesday night meetings, comments and interactions that made it clear their relationship was anything but professional. I compiled everything into a comprehensive file. Photos, timestamps, location data, financial records, social media evidence, a complete picture of their affair, documented and timestamped. It was nearly midnight when I finished. I was exhausted, but I was also satisfied. Let them deny their relationship now. Let them claim it was all professional. I had proof. My phone rang. Unknown number, but I was pretty sure I knew who it was. Hello? We need to meet. Marcus's voice tight with tension. No, we don't. Yes, we do. Tomorrow morning, Murphy's Diner, 8 a.m. Why would I want to meet with you? Because if you don't, things are going to get much worse for everyone involved. Is that another threat? It's a warning. 8 a.m. Murphy's Diner. Don't bring anyone with you. He hung up before I could respond. I stared at the phone, wondering what he thought he could accomplish with another face-to-face meeting. Then I realized what was happening. The restraining order hearing was Monday. Diane needed evidence that I was the aggressor, that I was the one making threats and causing problems. Marcus was trying to provoke me into doing something stupid, something that would support their narrative about me being dangerous and unstable. I smiled as I turned off the lights and headed to bed. Let him try. I'd been documenting everything for days now. If Marcus wanted to make threats or try to intimidate me, I'd have it all on record. Tomorrow morning was going to be very interesting. But first, I had one more task to complete. I uploaded all of my evidence to a secure cloud storage account and sent copies to Tom Bradley. If anything happened to me, if Marcus's threats escalated beyond words, there would be a complete record of everything I'd discovered. Then I set my alarm for 6 a.m. and went to sleep, wondering what Marcus thought he could say or do that would make any difference at this point. The truth was out there now, documented and preserved. No amount of threats or intimidation was going to change that. Game on. Friday morning arrived gray and cold, matching my mood as I prepared for what I suspected would be the final showdown with Marcus. I dressed carefully, jeans, work boots, flannel shirt, the uniform of a man who worked with his hands and wasn't intimidated by fancy suits and empty threats. I arrived at Murphy's Diner at 7:45 a.m., 15 minutes early. I wanted to choose my seat, control the environment, and watch Marcus arrive. Betty waved from behind the counter, and I settled into the same corner booth where Marcus had tried to intimidate me earlier in the week. He walked in at exactly 8 a.m., scanning the room like he expected an ambush. He looked tired, stressed, like a man who hadn't been sleeping well. Good. Andrew. He slid into the booth across from me. Marcus, you look terrible. We need to end this. I agree. When are you planning to resign from Hartwell Biotech? His jaw tightened. I'm not resigning anywhere. Then we don't have anything to discuss. I started to stand up, but he grabbed my wrist. Sit down. Take your hand off me. Not until you listen to what I have to say. I looked down at his hand on my wrist, then back at his face. Marcus, you have about 3 seconds to let go of me before this conversation becomes very different. He released my wrist but didn't lean back. Diane is filing for divorce. She's asking for spousal support and half of everything you own. I know. My lawyer called yesterday. She's also claiming you've been stalking her, threatening her, trying to destroy her career out of spite. Also old news. What's not old news is what happens next. You can continue this crusade of yours, try to destroy both of our careers, drag this through the courts for months, or you can walk away. Walk away from what? From the harassment, from the investigation, from trying to turn our employer against us. I leaned back in the booth and studied him. And in return? In return, Diane will withdraw the restraining order request. She'll agree to a quick, quiet divorce. No spousal support, equitable division of assets. Everyone moves on with their lives. What about accountability? What about it? You both lied. You both cheated. You both violated company policy. Where's the accountability for that? The accountability is that your marriage is over. Isn't that enough? I almost laughed. You think the end of my marriage is punishment for you? I think it's reality. Your marriage was over before I came along. Diane was miserable with you. If she was so miserable, why didn't she leave? Because she's a good person who didn't want to hurt you. So instead, she decided to lie to me for 6 months while sleeping with you. That's your definition of a good person? Marcus's composure was starting to crack. You don't understand what your marriage was really like. Enlighten me. She felt trapped. Stuck with someone who didn't appreciate her, didn't challenge her, didn't make her feel alive. And you did? I did. I do. By sneaking around behind her husband's back, by lying to everyone around you, that made her feel alive? We fell in love. It happens. No, Marcus. You had an affair. There's a difference. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to accept Diane's divorce terms. You're going to stop harassing us at work. You're going to stop this investigation of yours. Or what? Or we make your life very difficult. More difficult than discovering my wife has been cheating on me for 6 months? Much more difficult. Diane has friends, connections, influence in this town. She can make things very hard for you professionally, socially, financially. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table between us. The voice recording app was running, had been since before he arrived. Keep talking. I'm documenting everything. His eyes widened as he realized what I'd done. You're recording this? Every word, including the part where you just threatened to make my life difficult if I don't accept being cheated on quietly. That's not... I wasn't threatening you. Really? Because it sounded like a threat to me. What do you think it'll sound like to a judge? Marcus stared at the phone like it was a snake. Turn that off. No. Turn it off or what? You'll make my life difficult? You already said that part. He reached for the phone, but I was faster. Years of operating heavy machinery had given me quick reflexes. I grabbed his wrist and squeezed, hard enough that he winced. Don't. Let go of me. Don't touch my phone. Don't touch me. Don't make threats you can't back up. I released his wrist, and he pulled his hand back, rubbing the spot where I'd gripped him. You're crazy. I'm documented. There's a difference. Betty appeared at our table with a coffee pot. Everything okay here, boys? Everything's fine, I said. Marcus was just leaving. Actually, I think I'll have some coffee. Marcus was trying to regain control of the situation. No, you won't. I stood up and dropped a $10 bill on the table. This conversation is over. Andrew, wait. I turned back to him. What? This doesn't have to be ugly. It's already ugly. You made it ugly when you started sleeping with my wife. I'm trying to find a solution that works for everyone. The solution is simple. You and Diane face the consequences of your choices. All of them. I walked out of the diner, leaving Marcus sitting alone in the booth. Through the window, I could see him on his phone, probably calling Diane to report that their intimidation attempt had failed. My phone buzzed as I got into my truck. Text from an unknown number. You're making a mistake. I replied. The only mistake I made was trusting my wife. The drive home gave me time to think about what had just happened. Marcus had shown his hand, revealed their strategy. They were counting on me being reasonable, being the bigger person, accepting the situation quietly to avoid a messy public divorce. They'd miscalculated. I wasn't interested in being reasonable. I wasn't interested in protecting their reputations or their careers or their feelings. I was interested in consequences. At home, I uploaded the recording of my conversation with Marcus to the same cloud storage where I kept all my other evidence. Then I called Tom Bradley. "Tom, I need to see you today. Marcus just tried to threaten me into dropping everything." "What kind of threats?" "Professional, social, financial retaliation if I don't accept Diane's divorce terms quietly. Please tell me you have proof." "I have a recording." "Good man. Can you be here in an hour?" An hour later, I was sitting in Tom's office while he listened to the recording of my conversation with Marcus. His expression grew darker with each threat, each attempt at intimidation. "This is good, Andrew. Very good. It completely undermines their claim that you're the one doing the threatening." "What do we do with it?" "We use it at the restraining order hearing on Monday. We also send a copy to their lawyer, let them know we have documentation of their client's boyfriend making threats." "What about Hartwell Biotech?" "What about them?" "Marcus just admitted on tape that he and Diane are in love, that they've been having an affair. That contradicts everything they told HR." Tom smiled. "Yes, it does. I think Patricia Chen would be very interested in hearing this recording." I left Tom's office feeling better than I had all week. The momentum had shifted. Instead of being on the defensive, reacting to their moves, I was now driving the action. My phone rang as I was driving home. "Diane." "Andrew, we need to talk." "Talk to my lawyer." "This is getting out of hand. You should have thought about that before you started lying to me. Marcus told me what happened at the diner. You can't keep recording private conversations." "It wasn't private. It was in a public place. And in Maine, I only need consent from one party to record a conversation. I consented." "You're trying to destroy us." "I'm trying to document the truth. If the truth destroys you, that's not my fault." "What do you want?" "I want you to face consequences for your choices." "What consequences?" "All of them." She was quiet for a moment. "Andrew, I know I hurt you. I know I made mistakes. But this has gone far enough." "Has it?" "Because from where I'm sitting, you haven't faced any real consequences yet. You're still employed, still living your life, still with your boyfriend, still trying to make me look like the bad guy for not accepting being cheated on." "I filed for divorce. Isn't that what you wanted?" "I wanted honesty. I wanted you to take responsibility for your choices. I wanted you to stop lying." "I have stopped lying." "Have you? Did you tell your HR department the truth about your relationship with Marcus?" Silence. "Did you tell your lawyer the truth about why our marriage ended?" More silence. "Did you tell Rebecca the truth about how long this has been going on?" "Andrew, you're still lying, Diane, to everyone, about everything. So no, this hasn't gone far enough." "What will it take?" "The truth, all of it. Public acknowledgement of what you did. Acceptance of consequences. And if I do that, then maybe we can have a civilized divorce. And if I don't, then you'll find out what happens when someone decides to stop being reasonable." I hung up and drove home, wondering if she would take the offer seriously or if she would continue trying to control the narrative, paint herself as the victim, avoid accountability for her choices. My phone buzzed with text messages throughout the afternoon. Some from numbers I recognized, friends and co-workers who'd heard about the situation. Some from numbers I didn't recognize, probably people taking sides in the drama. I ignored them all. Let people talk. Let them speculate. The truth would come out eventually, and when it did, everyone would know exactly who had been lying and who had been telling the truth. Saturday morning brought a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw Rebecca standing on the porch holding 2 cups of coffee. "Peace offering. she said when I opened the door. "Come in." We sat in the living room, drinking coffee and not talking for several minutes. Finally, Rebecca broke the silence. "She's scared, Andrew." "Good. Is that really what you want? To scare her?" "I want her to understand that choices have consequences. If that scares her, maybe she should have made better choices. She knows she screwed up." "Does she?" "Because yesterday she was still trying to get me to accept her divorce terms quietly, still trying to avoid any real consequences for what she did." "What do you consider real consequences?" "Losing her job for violating company policy, losing the respect of friends and family who trusted her, losing the comfortable life she built while lying to everyone around her." "That seems harsh." "Harsher than lying to your husband for 6 months while having an affair?" Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "What if she publicly admits what she did? What if she takes full responsibility?" "Then we'll see." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I have right now." Rebecca finished her coffee and stood up. "I hope you know what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing." After she left, I spent the day organizing all of my evidence, preparing for Monday's hearing: financial records, location data, social media screenshots, recorded conversations, a complete picture of deception and betrayal, documented and time-stamped. Sunday passed quietly. I went to church for the first time in months, partly for spiritual comfort and partly because I knew people would be talking about my situation. I wanted them to see me calm, composed, reasonable, not the dangerous, unstable man Diane was claiming I was. Monday morning arrived with sunshine and a sense of anticipation. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m. Tom met me at the courthouse at 9:30. "Ready for this?" "More than ready." Diane was already there with her lawyer, a sharp-looking woman in an expensive suit. She looked nervous, kept glancing in my direction like she expected me to do something unpredictable. Marcus was there too, sitting in the back of the courtroom. He avoided eye contact, focused on his phone like he had important business to attend to. The hearing lasted 45 minutes. Diane's lawyer presented their case first, painting me as a dangerous, unstable man who had been stalking and harassing his estranged wife. They had screenshots of my visit to Hartwell Biotech, records of my financial moves, testimony about my erratic behavior. Then Tom presented our case, the location sharing that Diane had set up herself, the recording of Marcus making threats, the timeline showing that I had been reacting to their deception, not initiating harassment. The judge listened to everything, reviewed all the evidence, and made his decision. Request for restraining order denied. The evidence shows that Mr. Waverly has been documenting what appears to be legitimate concerns about his wife's conduct, not engaging in stalking or harassment. If anything, the evidence suggests that Mr. Waverly is the one being threatened. Diane's face went white. Her lawyer whispered something urgent in her ear. "However," the judge continued, "I would advise all parties to conduct themselves with dignity and restraint as they work through their divorce proceedings. The court does not want to see this situation escalate further." We filed out of the courtroom in silence. In the hallway, Diane finally approached me. "Andrew, can we talk?" "About what?" "About ending this. All of it." I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in days. She looked exhausted, defeated, like someone who had finally run out of moves. "Are you ready to tell the truth?" "Yes." "All of it?" "Yes." "To everyone?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." "Then we can talk." But as we walked toward the courthouse exit, I wondered if she really meant it, or if this was just another attempt to control the damage, minimize the consequences, find a way to salvage something from the wreckage of her choices. I guess I was about to find out. The truth, as they say, has a way of coming out eventually, and after everything that had happened, I was finally ready to hear it.